So Agile, that's what we're going to talk about today, is Agile Methodology. My name's Tony Smith, and I'm a senior account manager. I've kind of moved over to the dark side, I like to say. I was over the business analyst group for many years, and I've moved over now to the sales side. And but still, I'm helping with some strategic accounts growing and planning their on-base solution. And then Michelle Telecki.
I'm still with the good guys. She left me. Yeah, I'm a senior business analyst with ImageSoft. Primarily lately working on a lot of our circuit court, district court, and appellate court accounts.
So both of us have had quite a bit of interest in, or not interest, but a lot of our experience in the government sector. So we want to talk a little bit about Agile today, and I wanted to introduce Rick, and he's in the room now. So Director of Professional Services. He got introduced in the earlier session, but if you were too far away to actually see who he is, he may interject kind of what we do at ImageSoft. So if he stands up and talks, we've already told him that's quite okay. We won't let him. You're right. We won't let him talk too long, but we will let him interject should he need to, or should he want to talk about something with professional services. So where is Agile used? So we want to talk a little bit about that. It truly is a buzzword today. You're hearing about it in every shop. It's been around since 2001, so it's not new. I guess it's just really gained a lot of momentum, and it's truly now like the buzzword of development. But basically, it's being used in a lot of places. At ImageSoft, we use it in our product development area. So your TrueSign product, if you own TrueSign, if you are using any of our portals to file documents, electronic filing, all of that is developed using the Agile methodology that we're going to talk about. So that's where ImageSoft is using it today.
Right. And it just in general, Agile, it is being more widely adapted. So it could be something just a tiny, little in-house project to when they make modifications to a pacemaker device, they're doing it Agile. Some of the technology that's in your cars today, they're developing that Agile as well, primarily for the benefit of the testing functionality. But our point here is that it does span. You don't have to have a huge project to kind of give this a run or give it a go. It is very scalable from very small to very large enterprise deals. And similarly, we made the point just in the government on-base projects as well. Again, you could be very small, very large, and it could be a fit for you.
And another thing that I'd like to add to that is it's just really not a fad because it has been around since 2001. You're hearing about it more now because it has become more popular, but also because there's so many different areas of Agile, and some shops or IT shops are adapting just pieces of the Agile methodology, not the whole kit and caboodle. And so that's why you're hearing a lot of it as well. So the Agile overview, just want to talk to you a little bit. A methodology is really just the model that you use to get your solution complete, your software developed. It's a word that describes that. And the Agile methodology is the methodology that we want to talk about today. And this is a very high-level slide. We're going to just really quickly go through it and then move on because we're going to talk about each of these sections. But it's basically a methodology where you deliver your software in smaller increments to production, in smaller valuable increments to production, instead of a one big bang waterfall approach where you go in and you do a discovery session and you say, I need to know everything about this solution. Then you take it back to development, and the business doesn't hear from you for months while you're developing and developing and developing, and then you come back and you give this big bang approach of here's the solution. Instead of doing that, you understand the overall solution, but then you're taking little segments and you're delivering segments of that solution to the business that they can start with and ramp up on, and then it changes as you go over time and you deliver the next segment or the next phase. So in that, we have sprint planning, and again, we're going to cover more of this later. User stories we're going to talk about, and then your team, we'll talk a lot about who's on that team, and then the assignments, and then the cycle of how they work in their iteration or their phase is broken really down to days, into a day, and then that day works into a cycle, and then delivering that solution.
Right.
This is a slide actually from a customer, actually. CAA, they're like the AAA in Canada, in Ontario. And they did an entire transformation of their claims department. And they did this in an agile approach. And I heard the guy speak, and he let me steal a few slides from him. They literally put their team in a room together, and this is how they worked. So they did not work in their offices. They commandeered for lack of a better word, a conference room. You can see they have their laptops and their computers all set up, and they came to work every day, and they worked like this for, I think, 4 to 6 months while they were working on an agile project, because teamwork is so important in an agile project, to be face-to-face working with this team every day. And I just wanted to show you this picture because they really took it to the extreme that they wanted to be together in a room. I was going to say 24/7, but they let them go home.
Okay, another hot word these days, the Agile Manifesto. So Tony and I tried to skinny it down a bit to kind of the main principles. When we say individuals and interactions are more important than processes and tools, working software is more important than the comprehensive documentation. The customer collaboration is more important than the contract negotiation. And responding to change is more important than following a plan. So when we talk about those things, that doesn't mean that the other items are not important. They're all important. It's just what we're adding more or putting more value to in an agile type of development cycle.
And I'd like to add also, as you think about this, when you're trying to make decisions about your solution, you want to come back to these 4 things. So if you're getting to a decision point, or maybe you're having a disagreement, or you're trying to decide what to do about something, you want to come back to these 4 principles and say, what am I doing? Am I putting individuals and interactions over the tool? Am I so worried about documentation that my working software, I can't show my software? They're important on the right side, that's true, but you want to make sure that you go back to these when you're making decisions. Mm-hmm. So we want to talk a little bit about the main principles. There's, 11, 12 driving principles that they call the manifesto of Agile. The first one is continuing delivering of valuable software. So we talked about Agile being just iterations, right? So you're delivering software, smaller chunks of software in a steady pace. And so continuous delivery of software. So you get yourself on a schedule, whether it's every 6 weeks that you're delivering that product, or every 30 days, or every 2 months, however your cycle is, and you continue that, and you deliver a piece of software or some functionality of that software in those days continuously. And a key word there, valuable software. So you're not delivering for the sake of getting a delivery date done, but something that really does benefit, some functionality that really does benefit.
Right. And then we talk about requirements change, and we say accept it, kind of a rude statement, but during Agile kind of sets you up in an environment where you can harness change and welcome change. And as Tony mentioned, while you're working to get to that valuable software, things are going to change. And you really do just need to accept it and move on. It's the best way to say it.
And another thing is, it's no surprise to you guys, we sell OnBase, right? I think everybody here has OnBase. One thing that is really great about the Agile methodology is, especially for you guys that already have your systems up and running and going, the OnBase configuration module allows change easily. So where a lot of software, your big name softwares, or your, things, I'm not picking on them because they're very good software, like PeopleSoft and SAPs and things like that. Very great software, but to change it, you have to almost move a mountain, where with OnBase, it allows you to accept change. And when they say, this isn't quite working for me, it really does allow for that. The daily interaction between business people, I've already talked about that with the slide from CAA, but basically, your business is part of this team. You don't go off in a silo and develop. So you're continually showing them what you're developing.
Your project team themselves, you want to build your project team with kind of a chunk of really motivated individuals, cheerleaders, champions, those that are really behind the project that you're doing. I called it, I said, you don't want Debbie Downer on your team or, Nancy Naysayer. You really do want the people on your team that are going to work really hard to ensure the success of the project. And aside from that, have that team be available in an environment that they can succeed. So make sure that they have, even if it's just something, extra laptops, extra monitors, extra whiteboards, kind of set them up to succeed too from the project side.
And, she talks about motivated individuals, and if you want to know why we're speaking here today, it's because we love the Government Summit. We love the products and things that we bring to you guys. We love being on site, looking at your solutions and trying to make them better for the next customer as well as you. And so we're that's the kind of people that you want to be on your team. And it's like when they say Government Summit, who can talk about Agile? I raised my hand. I'm not so sure I was happy about it today, but I definitely was then, thought this would be a great opportunity. And then of course I drug Michelle along as well, because she's one of those people that are easy to put on your team because she likes to harness that system and make it work and watch people smile at the end of the day. The next one is like conversation should be in person. We've gotten so digital that it almost hurts, she really did a great job on that, didn't she? But I could say, she did a great job on that, didn't she? I said the same words, but they meant such different things. We've lost so much of that going via email, via text, going digital because we don't want to pick up our phone anymore and talk to somebody because it takes longer. We want to be more efficient. But on an Agile team, conversation in person is the best approach if you can do that. And if not in person, over the phone. Of course you're going to have emails. Of course you're going to have tons of trails and things that you have to communicate via email and via documents. But we would encourage you to have that face-to-face meeting as often as you can and to communicate in face, especially over things that you're trying to get feedback on. It's so much easier if you can talk to a person about it rather than to try to ask all your questions via an email or answer them via an email. You end up with these really long answers that people half read at the end, and so they get half of your requirement.
And the next one is your progress is shown by delivering working software. We've kind of beat on so far the working software, but that is a big part of Agile, and that is how you're going to manage both your project, both your progress as well as your success or your lessons learned as well.
And the next one, constant pace. I think this will be the hardest for especially government. We all know that you're doing more with less. I was talking to someone last night and they told me they went from something like 30 staff down to 22 and their caseloads had gone up. I mean, that's reality, I'm sure, at almost every county. I don't know of any counties in Michigan today that are screaming, we're wealthy, we have a lot of extra money, come our way. So this constant pace is going to be hard because you have to have people that are committed to spend the time, and they can't be spending, 20 hours this week or this month, and next week they have 40 hours to spend, and then the next week they're going to drop down to 3. It doesn't work well like that. You have to have a constant pace. You have to be able to designate people on the team that can keep that constant pace. It doesn't mean they have to work 8 hours a day at that pace, but if you have a project and you're going to do 2 hours a day, you can't do 2 one day and none for 3 weeks and then pick up, the next week. And I think this would be the biggest challenge probably in the government arena, is that constant pace. I really believe that will be the challenge there.
The agility. So technical excellence and a good design is going to enhance your agility. So our key point there is you want to make sure when you get started that you have somebody that is kind of your technical expert. So for example, you're using OnBase. You want to make sure you have somebody that really understands OnBase config, understands the new enhancements or perhaps the limitations, so that you have that kind of technical champion that can guide you both through your kind of design process, but then as well while you're testing and kind of tweaking along the way.
The next one's simplicity. So I think this is really more the art of what you're not doing at the current time. So if you think about a solution and maybe you're going to implement a small solution and it has 150 functions that you've listed that you've got to deliver, functionality, it's got 150 requirements to it. When you look at simplicity, you have to manage kind of what you're not going to do yet. I think that's harder than what you're going to do. So what happens is we look at these 150 and we say, oh my goodness, we've got to deliver all 150. It won't work. It's not going to work. So managing that list of what can I deliver in this first pass, it might be 10 things, and then keeping those other 140 over on the right. It's hard to do, but that's how you keep it simple, and that's how you keep delivering software that is valuable. Is let's take those top 10 and let's deliver those first and manage that list that we're not doing. And I think that's hard. I think that's a hard thing to do, but it's important. I have a quote from Albert Einstein that I didn't put on the slide, probably should have put it up here, but he basically said everything should be made simple as possible, but not simpler. Ask yourself if you're providing something that's most useful with the least amount of time. And that's really what the simplicity statement is all about. Am I delivering what's really useful, and is it taking me the least amount of time to do that?
And then you're operating with self-organizing teams. So pretty much what that means is you're going to assemble a team of people that you don't need to dictate work and tasks to. They're going to be in that group. They're going to work together to prioritize work, to reassign work, and to actually take the work. And those kind of highly motivated individuals really make this process go much, much smoother.
And then the last thing that we have up here as far as the principles that guide Agile is constant pulse on effectiveness. So as you're delivering, as you're looking at things, am I being effective? More of a lessons learned type thing. Did what I deliver, was it effective? Did it meet the mark? What should have I done differently? Were we able to do this as simply as we could have? You know, maybe if we'd have had something else, or if we'd have had a different team member or someone with some skill set. And I guess that led to roles. I didn't think about team. I didn't realize that's where we were going next. But so let's talk about the roles in an Agile. I think an important thing before we even start covering the slide is that for you to note is that an individual can serve more than one role. So you don't have to have one person that only serves that one role on the team. A person could serve 2 or 3 roles on the team. And so that's important to know right off the bat. The other thing is, Michelle said, these motivated people that are kind of self-organizing teams, often they'll be on a role, they'll play a role for a part of time, and then maybe further along in the project they move to a different role or they augment a different role. Generally, when you have these, we call them self-organizing teams. I'm not even sure that's the best term, but they go to their strengths. They go that they had some success in this first piece, and so they're building on that success, so they may move to even change to a different role. But the first role we'll talk about is the stakeholder. And the stakeholder, I think most of you guys know what this is. It's somebody that probably has some kind of financial interest. It might be someone that needs to get reelected in your county that has an interest in it. It might be that someone just took a job and they realize that they've got to turn a department around, maybe because the person that maybe you've lost 3 people that were there 22 years. You lost tons of knowledge. They've retired. I talked to someone last night as well that said they lost 2 people, I think within just a few weeks of each other. One had 22 years of knowledge and one like 29 years of knowledge. And when your department's only 4 people, you just lost, your brains almost, as far as I don't know, she didn't give up. She did hire, she did train, and she is being successful, but that's the kind of thing you could be falling into that role. So the stakeholder just has some meat in the game, some skin in the game.
Next, we have the product owner. So the product owner is really the voice of the customer. And this is typically also the person that's going to take information from the stakeholder community and translate it down to your Agile team.
Yep. And then the team members, we want to talk a little bit about those. So they consist of analysts, the customer, and your customer being the people that you are developing for. The developer, the tester, the subject matter expert, and the integrator. So all of those people, I like to call the team members the worker bees. So they're the ones that actually is doing the testing, showing the software, deciding what to do. That's the people on the, as far as team members go.
And then your team lead, that's going to be the person that's kind of guiding you along the way. I like to look at this role as almost like the project manager. But again, as Tony mentioned, that person may cross multiple roles, but they're the one that's really going to keep your project on track, manage the schedule, manage open items.
And then the architect owner, we've talked a bit about having, that person on your team that understands what you're developing in. The architect owner is going to make sure that as you're making these small decisions, what I call a small decision, it might be a large decision, but in the scheme of things, you're going to make many decisions on functionality. So if we were delivering 12 pieces of functionality in this iteration, we want to make sure that one of those decisions that we made doesn't affect something that we know we're going to have to do down the road, or doesn't paint us in a box. And that architect owner would make sure of that. They're that lead person or that senior person on the team that can keep you from going down an avenue that you shouldn't go down. So next we're going to talk a little bit just about the development process. And remember I talked about how we had this software we're going to deliver. It had 150 pieces of functionality in it that got listed, and we need to deliver this in 6 months or how much ever time. We would take all those 150 and we would start ranking them. And we'd start ranking them 1 through 150. What is it that I need to deliver first? What's the most important? And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick the top 10 or the top whatever we've decided, and we're going to develop that functionality one at a time. So we're going to develop the first piece of functionality. It may take 1 to 4 weeks to complete. It may take less. I'm not as worried about that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in some later slides. And then we're going to show that functionality to the business. And we're going to say, did we hit the mark? Is it right? And then when the business says, hey, yes, that's good, we can put that into production, we're actually going to put that into production. And then we're going to do it all over again.
And the other thing that typically occurs here is you'll go through this process where you're going to set out that ranking scale. That doesn't have to be set in stone. You may put a piece of functionality into production, and just by virtue of doing that, your user base starts using this system, and now we have to reprioritize or re-rank the existing items that are on our list.
So you can expect that whatever was 150 on that list is not going to be 150 when you deliver your solution. It might have moved up to 75. It might have moved up to 2, but it's definitely going to change order.
Okay, so planning. Obviously, planning is a huge part of everything that we've talked about so far. And we've used a lot of terminology too. So phases, segments, hearings, or iterations, they're essentially all the same thing. What we're trying to figure out by the planning is how we're going to break up the actual development cycle. And that is typically done with those 3 types of planning meetings.
So in the 3, we have release, iteration, planning. So if you look at the top one, that's the larger piece. So it goes from larger to smaller. So release planning, meaning this is what I'm going to deliver to the customer during this phase or iteration, whatever you want to call it, during this segment. So that's the release. And then from that, we plan iterations, meaning how much can I get done, who's going to be working on this part of the functionality. And then from there, we have daily planning. What am I going to get done today? And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those planning sessions. But basically, there's a lot of planning in Agile. People think that we're Agile, we don't plan. We just kind of do whatever we want to do. And tomorrow, we might do something different. That's not how Agile works. There really is a lot of planning. You've got to plan what you're going to deliver, what your set of functionality is going to be, how fast can I get it done, and what's going to be part of this iteration to make sure I'm staying on track, and then what am I doing today to make sure that tomorrow is happening. And from that, we have these, I want to talk a little bit, this table's a little bit shaky. I don't want to lean on it, I'm going to fall with it, I'm afraid. So I need to back away from the table. We have daily stand-up meetings. And so I want to emphasize on a daily stand-up meeting that the important part of it is it's short. So the last thing that we want to do is to meet, to have a pre-meeting to talk about our meeting, and then have a post-meeting to talk about the meeting, and then have another meeting to plan another meeting because we didn't finish in the regular meeting what we planned in the pre-meeting. So that's not what this meeting's about. This is a 15-minute at the maximum stand-up meeting. They call it a stand-up meeting. That's so you don't get comfortable when you're sitting down, right? So 15 minutes, these are the 3 topics that you discuss with your team members. You discuss what I did yesterday, what I plan to do today, and what's keeping me from doing what I need to be doing. So what didn't I get done basically because I couldn't, because I had some type of impedance. Those 3 things are all you really discuss in a stand-up meeting. What did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? And what are my issues, basically?
And these meetings really help people stay on track, and that's also your measure of accountability too. So they do serve a real valuable purpose. Okay. User stories are also a big part of kind of the Agile approach. Any of you that have worked with Tony and myself, or any of the business analysts at ImageSoft, have probably received a large document from us. Mine larger than Tony's typically, but you know, those documents are great. They have a lot of detail in them, and it's important and good information for both our developers, but then from the business too. The functional spec document is meant to set your expectation of what you're going to get with a developed product. In the Agile environment, it's not that we get away from that document per se. The document just gets structured a little bit different. So we capture your requirements more in the form of a user story. And these are kind of, when Tony and I will go through some examples with you, but we're capturing your use case. We're capturing kind of the functionality that you're saying, as this person, I need to do X, Y, Z because it will save me 3 clicks and I'll be able to process a document faster. Whereas, you know, recording it that way is much simpler. It's more understandable to the business that that's what you asked for. The flip side of that would be maybe Tony and I coming in and saying, oh, you need to do that. Well, this is how we're going to configure it. Still important, but doesn't necessarily need to be in a big lengthy document because we've captured what the business needs and what the software is supposed to do.
And I'm known probably, I mean, I literally was, it wasn't at a government agency. It was actually at a hospital. I was doing a discovery, and I got done at the end of the day, and I was dealing with the HR department. And the lady goes, you know, I was in a deposition last week, and this is way worse than a deposition. And I'm like, wow, I feel really bad about this. I've really made it her hard day. You know, we were on a schedule, and I am motivated, and I don't ever take a restroom break, and I don't remember to eat if someone doesn't stop me. The project managers just pull my, you know, just pull at me and yell at me. Like they literally put breaks in my agenda because they think I'll see that when I don't look at it once I have it all going. But basically I would say to them, you know, okay, they give me some functionality, and I would say, okay, put it in a story for me. Tell me how you're really going to use this. And that story was so much more valuable to me when I took it back to my team and could say, hey, they need to do this because you don't get it. No, I can't do it that way, because when they make this decision, if they can't see X, Y, and Z, this could end up, you know, being a disaster for them. So I'm always asking for that story, but now instead of, you know, documenting more how we're going to do it, we're documenting the story. And that's what these cards do for us. So we always have captured that, and I've always done it just because I understand better that way, and then I can relate it back to you that way as well. I could relate it to the developers, but it's just a great way to get the functionality recorded that the person needs.
So we made a couple samples, and I'll just read through them briefly. Each one of these cards, and this is typically what they would look like. They might have a little bit more information, a little bit less, but you're going to give a title to your request. And again, these, you're going to have kind of one user story or one card per piece of functionality that the business is requesting. So the first one, we have adding a docket entry to the case management system from workflow. So I say, as a clerk, I want to automatically create a docket entry in my CMS or case management system from an electronic document, so that I can make a docket entry concurrently while reviewing the document, avoiding mouse clicks and saving time. The other one that we came up with was generating a marriage license automatically, but very similar. So as a vital records processor, I want to review an electronic marriage application that I have in OnBase, for example, so that I can save time and effort in both document generation and typing keystrokes, as well as providing the customer at the counter with their marriage license more timely. That one's a little bit wordy, but any of you that have worked with me know that I'm a little bit wordy, so, but you get the gist of it. It's Yeah, you want to just kind of hone in on a particular piece of functionality, and even if you end up with, 500 of these, that's okay, because then that's where that whole reprioritization activity comes into play.
Now, some people even they use cards. So they actually give out cards to their team. Since we are a paperless company, we're not encouraging that in any way. We would encourage you to have e-forms. Then you could electronically rake them. Can you see the whole workview system with that we could develop?
See, and Tony said that earlier. I was like, as I sit with a stack of paper, we try.
We would encourage you to put them in printable forms.
Yeah.
No, but actually, this could literally be in an e-form that you developed, and you put these in to help
Right.
rank them. The hard one, estimating. It's just hard. It's hard to do. There's just so many outside factors and inside factors that make estimating so difficult. But basically, you still have to estimate. Just because you're agile, it doesn't mean that you don't have a finish line, and you don't need to know how much it's going to cost you to get to that finish line. Just because you're spending your dollar 10 cents at a time, it doesn't mean you have more than $1 to spend, basically. So that's kind of sizes it up in a nutshell. But basically, you have to know the size of the project. You have to know the velocity, and the velocity is how much can your team produce, right? And then the effort that it takes to get there. A couple things that I find a little bit difficult, and in talking to some of our internal people, find a little bit difficult, is the way that you estimate is not by man hours. So we're so ingrained in how long is this going to take you? Is it going to take you a day? Is it going to take you 2 days? Is it going to take you a week? But instead, you want to estimate in like points or something that doesn't really attach to the hours. And if you think about it, the best scenario I read in everything, trying to learn how to estimate better in a point solution, they actually gave a scenario about T-shirts, and they said, T-shirts come in small, they come in medium, they come in large, they come in extra large, and they really sometimes we even have some other sizes. We could get a double X large, or we could get an extra small. And we basically know, when we think about it, there's not a regulator out there that says, oh, this medium is not 2 inches and bigger than the small, so this isn't a medium. There's not one of those out there. You just know when you go to the store, if you generally wear a medium, you're probably going to wear a medium. It varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. Now, it might be that, depending on the brand, you wear a medium here or a large there, but that's been strongly successful. The sizing of our T-shirts has been really successful, not because of its precision, right? Because the precision isn't really there. It's just been really successful because of its general accuracy. So you pretty much, I don't know about you guys, I hate trying on clothes at the store. I don't try on a T-shirt ever. I bring it home and I know it, I hold it up, and it's generally right. So that's kind of what you're going to do with the point system. So you're going to say, let's look at some functionality. And maybe the functionality is, I want to be able to store a document. I'll use an on-base example. I want to be able to store a document and easily be able to retrieve that. And I'm going to rate that as a 1 point effort, 1 point. And then if I compare that to, once I store that document, I want to integrate it and automatically tell my case management system that I've stored it and that I've received it. Now that's a little more than a point. So I would say that might be 5 points. So once you kind of establish that point, then you say, well, that would equal maybe 5 of those worth of effort. One of the key reasons they do this is to get away from trying to manage the estimation by people. You all have people who work very quickly. And I don't know how many of you have worked with Michelle. I've never seen anyone that can whip out a training document faster than Michelle. She's just fast at it. She intimidates me. I don't like to watch her do it because she's so much quicker than I am. So if we were estimating points, it would be equal. Now that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to whip out 5 points at the same time she whips out 5 points. She can whip out those 5 points in 2 hours, and it might literally take me 4 hours to whip out those 5 points. So that gets you away from the people and how fast they work, and more what's the true effort. And that's why you want to estimate more in points. And I didn't say, did I talk about velocity a little bit?
Yeah.
Or are we going there next?
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry. I didn't know if I left it out or.
Yeah, and well, I think you did touch on it. So the velocity, that's the total amount of points your team or a team is going to accomplish in an iteration. So at the end of each iteration, you can take all of those points and add them up. And take that kind of total number of completed story points. So things that are truly, because remember, we're measuring on working software, good software. So you want to add up all of the points of what you have that's good, and then you can start tracking that in each iteration and start getting that average. Using that, then you can start applying kind of the time and duration to those points. Once you have a few under your belt and you see that, okay, we're pretty much consecutively, our iterations are at 30 points, 32 points, 31 points, and you'll get that average of time, which then you can start forecasting the rest of your project schedule.
Really takes a lot of human element out of it, though, like I said, as far as we all have people with different skill sets on our team, or it may be that I'm thrown into a role that I'm not as good at, but I'm covering this role because there's no one better than me on the team, to do it, or I just need to do that. So that really does help with that. The points do. Continuous integration and development. So this is all about, I almost like to say it's really about exposure. You just show what you write and you look at it every day. So when you look at this term, it almost, it's hard to relate in on-base terms, because basically in configuration, you configure it and then you look at it. You configure it and you can immediately see it. But this really means, check back in your code so that everybody can look at what you're doing. So you can continuously be evaluating what they're doing, so that if I got it wrong, I'm going to just use an on-base filter. That's a very simple term. Most of you guys have on-base filters in your systems, or custom queries or something like that. If I can see the custom query right away, I can tell what's missing. Maybe I didn't think about something on the list. So what it's saying is, check back in your code, let your business users look at it, let the people on your team that represent your business see this, and continually keep that cycle going. Show and tell, show and tell, show and tell. Be very transparent with your development cycle.
And just kind of piggybacking off of what Tony was just saying, after you're showing this software, it's kind of part of an iteration review. So the development team is going to complete that development. We're going to get it in front of the business faster. Once a demonstration's been done, the business gets to take a look at it, then we're going to collect feedback. We're going to rework and kind of continually improve the system based on that feedback. And then once everything's all set in that iteration, then we're going to finish up with kind of our lessons learned. So what went awry, what can we do better next time, and all of that, then you get continuous improvement even in your iterations and your project team itself, because you're learning in shorter cycles and you can apply those lessons learned immediately.
So, and I know we started a little bit late, but I think we're going to finish on time. We're going to be close, so stay with us here just a little bit longer.
It's time for my riveting slides.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No. Pitfalls. So we want to talk a little bit about the pitfalls that people fall into as they try to adopt Agile. The first one's focusing only on construction. I already talked about this. You still have to plan. You can't just focus on construction. You have to listen. You have to have the user stories. You have to understand the functionality, and then you construct. So it's not just, I'm going to go build a house and see if it works, and I really meant to build a boat. Do you know what I mean? It's not that. It's not, if I don't like it today, I'll change it tomorrow because we're Agile. So I'll just build it and we'll see if they come. It doesn't work like that. You can't focus just on construction.
Yeah, and then becoming Agile zombies. What we mean by that is don't adapt or do Agile just for the sake of doing Agile and because it's a hot word at the moment. Really, if you're going to take it on, the key takeaway is workable, usable, quality software. So you don't want to, kind of to your point, Tony, we don't want to just keep throwing code around and stuff just for the sake of, well, we're operating Agile. The end result, and again, the measure of your progress is the working software.
Improper planning. I think I've talked enough about the improper planning. You do have to plan.
Yeah, and then excluding the entire organization. So this again it's all about visibility. A lot of times we do all, we'll operate in certain pockets, and then when you go to try to expose it to the greater business team, it's a hurdle. And Agile really wants you to have those folks involved early and often.
And transparent.
And
Transparency
transparent.
was probably almost even a better word we
Yeah.
could put on our slide. Lack of executive support. Don't think because you're spending a time instead of a dollar, so you're spending this at a dime a time, you don't need the executive support. You won't be successful without executive support. We see it in small projects, we see it in large projects, we see it in the waterfall approach, we see it in Agile. You have to have executive support to be successful.
Going too fast. So a lot of times, all of these, planning meetings and even the daily stand-up meeting, it can get a little intense. It makes you feel a little overwhelmed, especially if you're one of those project team members or somebody that was responsible for something of the day. No one ever wants to say, hey, sorry, I didn't get it done. But when you're adopting this approach, you have to, hey, sorry, I didn't get it done, and this is why, and you move on.
And then insufficient coaching. A lot of the larger teams and a lot of the software houses actually brought in Agile coaches that actually helped with the Agile process, and or they have brought in someone that has used Agile in their past, and they actually they served as a team member just as a coach, and they just coached through the Agile process, not really the process of developing the software, but just as that coach.
The retaining traditional governance, it's kind of a no-brainer, but yeah, Agile's not the ticket to ride and do whatever you want. We still are trying to abide by the rules of your business or any other governance that you have.
And then skipping on training. So this is a real misnomer. I do think, though, it makes training easier because you're training in small little chunks. So I do think that's good. The environment sometimes is harder because I know for many of you guys to do a training, you have to it's like moving mountains to get machines into a room and to actually have training. In an Agile approach, it's very nice if you have a training center that you can go just show a piece of functionality and do a 30-minute meeting. I think it works much better if you can do it that way. Now, not all of you guys have that, and so it may be at people's desks that you're doing this kind of almost impromptu training, but you can't skimp on it. It's just that you're doing it in smaller chunks. And I do think, though, that people learn quicker because they can absorb in smaller chunks. So what you taught them in that 30 minutes, they really learned. Instead of what you taught them over 8 hours, they picked up about an hour and a half of what you taught them. So I do think it does accelerate the learning, but it doesn't mean that you're going to skimp on it.
And our last one was skimping on tooling, and the point we wanted to make with that one is, again, just kind of the quality of what you're outputting, the quality of your configuration, and the careful thought behind everything that you're doing so that you do get that working software.
And then the last slide we have really is, it talks about the myths, and we'll just read through these. You probably have all heard them. See, there are some people that get your humor in here. She puts these slides, I'm like, what does this picture have to do with this
whole
slide?
Time, and I'm just, anybody that knows me knows I need a little more excitement than that, so I told her I was going to put some pictures on the last couple slides.
So, and there were a few chuckles that get your sense of humor. See, I'm like, why did we have this? I don't even know this cat, but she knows its name.
Grumpy cat.
Okay, see, there are people here, you said. So Agile's a fad, that's a myth. It's not a fad, it's been around since 2001. I will say that true Agile is a little bit different than adapting pockets of Agile, and I think that's where we're seeing the big, robust people, the big companies, or all the companies that are adjusting. They're gradually moving into this. They're just doing pockets of this.
Agile is not disciplined. Even today, we took you through about 10 slides that talked about the planning and the meetings that are held. It's very disciplined and needs to be disciplined in order to be successful.
And the planning, I need to say no more about. You do plan, so.
And Agile means no documentation. Also not true. You may get a leaner functional spec, but we make that up with training, and you have all those user stories, and you'll actually end up with probably more documentation than what you would in a traditional waterfall approach.
Yeah, and you document sometimes afterwards too, just for just so that you have the system documented. Agile is only effective in a collocated team. This isn't true. And at ImageSoft, we've done some Agile projects with customers. We just finished one with a Canadian customer, and we were not face-to-face. We had stand-up meetings every day. I will tell you it would have been easier if we were on site, but it definitely was very effective, went off very, very well, and we were not face-to-face or side-by-side. We were on the phone, but it went very well. So it can work even if you're not right face-to-face together.
Agile doesn't scale, also not true, and we talked about that a little bit right at the beginning. You can really apply it to any size project, big or small, enterprise, global.
Yes. And then Agile is unsuited for regulated environments. I would say that that is totally not true. I know lots of insurance companies that are using it. Hospitals are using this now, many regulated environments.
Agile means we don't know what will be delivered. Again, this is not true. It's the manner of how we're capturing that information. So my best example is, a lot of times in the functional spec documents that you'll get, it's like, when you click this button, XYZ is going to happen, and then we might have a technical note that says, and this is the 4 lines of code that we're going to configure it. It just becomes a little more high level, but still we're going to capture what the requirement actually is, or the use case.
Agile won't work at my company. Whoever says that is not one of those self-motivated people that you want on your team. I probably don't need to say anymore, do I? So Agile will work in pockets of your company. I'm not saying it's it doesn't fix all, and it's not something that everyone's going to 100% adopt and it's going to be effective 100%. But it is definitely places that Agile fits in.
It's enough for my development team to be Agile. That is not okay. Your entire team, those folks that are planning it, designing it, everybody has to operate Agile. We can't do kind of the traditional waterfall approach, and then when we get to development, say, okay, now we're going to flip the switch and go Agile. It doesn't typically work very well.
And then Agile is a silver bullet. Just like any project, your methodology does not fix the project. The methodology is a tool you use to get the project done. And the Agile methodology is one that has been very effective at a lot of companies. But I just want to say it's not the silver bullet. If you don't have the stakeholders, if you don't have everything in place, your project's not, just going Agile is not going to fix your problems. Okay, so thank you. We appreciate you attending. And this, I should have said earlier, and I apologize, the slides will be available to you. Bev either has it in your packet, or she'll be sending out emails after the government summit telling you where to download them. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.